The third chapter in Ty West's trilogy is a direct sequel to the first film, X, after the second film, Pearl, served as a prequel. The story picks up with MaXXXine, played once more by Mia Goth, who since the events of the last film has made a mark in the world of adult entertainment, but now desires to break into the big time of Hollywood stardom with parts in more high-profile films. When she auditions for a breakout part in a horror sequel, her path to stardom begins, but something dark is playing in the underbelly of LA, with the gruesome Night Stalker murders taking place, and with fellow starlets going missing. Then, a reminder of Maxine's own past comes back to haunt her when a VHS of her and her friends from that first film is delivered to her. With evidence pointing LAPD detectives Williams and Torres, Michelle Moynihan and Bobby Cannavale, in Maxine's direction, personal and professional life collide for Maxine, threatening not just her life, but her chance at fame and fortune. The first film, X, was a play on late 70s horror, both in story and presentation. Pearl was a Technicolor dreamscape horror, echoing the era of the films that it was set within. Maxine has a similar shift in style, this time echoing the grubby crime thrillers of the early 80s, exploring the dark underbelly of Hollywood, with neon lights cutting through darkened streets. This shifting tone between the films works perfectly to let each entry be its own thing, while still containing the connective tissue to link the three chapters. Setting the tale against the backdrop of the real-life Night Stalker murders adds a dark sense of realism and threat throughout, which grounds the film into the real-world setting that it's exploring. Goth, once more, dominates the screen, being every bit the star that Maxine herself aspires to be, with a fiercely strong performance that captures the anything-for-fame approach that Maxine herself abides by. Around her, the key cast and support are drawn from a plethora of great names, with the aforementioned Moynihan and Cannavale, Elizabeth Debicki, Lily Collins, Giancarlo Esposito, and Kevin Bacon being particularly notable for what they each bring to their parts. The mix of characters and how well they are presented ensures that you cannot help but be drawn into this seedy world and root for Maxine throughout. Those expecting the full-on horror of X may feel a little disappointed by the approach taken here. Yes, there are fleeting moments of gruesome effects, but they are sporadic and mostly absent. Instead, this film's almost noirish approach offers a different style and tone once again, which I personally feel makes it not just a cheap sequel, but a fascinating study of corruption and cover-ups within the upper echelons of the Hollywood elite. West initially said that he was only making a trilogy, with each one having its own feel, and he's more than succeeded, showing his love for films across the decades as a result. In recent months, he has hinted at a possible fourth film idea that he has to link into the story, and it's safe to say that I'd be more than curious to see where he could explore and how he would explore it if that ever comes to fruition. In the meantime, the whole X trilogy have been a marvellous showcase of Ty West as a director and Mia Goth as a lead, and they make for a satisfying journey.
In this day and age, Andy, it's still impossible to make a great killer shark film, because no matter what, Jaws did it so perfectly that anything that you do is always going to be drawn conclusively to Jaws, which is a masterpiece. There is no chance to make the greatest shark movie of all time, because it has been done. It will never be bettered. And so we get something that's a bit silly like The Meg, or we'll get Deep Blue Sea. That still falls into silly, I guess. We got the 47 meters down, and then we've got The Shallows, and the film that you talked about, which escapes me because you said it was that poor.
Something in the Water.
That's it. So now we've got Under Paris, and yes, as the title is set, as the title suggests, it's set in and around the Seine. So years after surviving a shark attack that killed her husband and marine crew, scientist Sophia, played by Berenice Bejo, faces the terrifying truth that the rapidly evolving creature known as Lilith has made her way to Paris and is kind of hungry and wants to chomp down on on the citizens of Paris. Now you're thinking, how does a shark worry the peoples of Paris? Well, of course, you can't keep people out of the water. And let's be honest, this is trashy. But it's not that trashy where it's genuinely awful. There's some elements going for it. It's directed by Xavier Gans, who's one of those directors who came out of that French new wave of horror, probably best known to Western-speaking audiences as the director of Hitman. But it delivers on what it's meant to do. It delivers on the thrills, and it combines all the stuff that we've seen before with a slightly different perspective. And then a chance to save Paris from a bloodbath. I thought this was okay. It was a bit clunky. It wore the eco warrior bit a little bit too much on its sleeve, but I didn't have a problem with that. It's just a kind of a good, solid shark thriller. Did you finally get to see it on my recommendation?
I did. I watched it a few days ago. My notes of it is just a load of puns. That's how much it made for me. I mean, I was disappointed that no one said Chakra Bleu anywhere through it. It's set in Paris, but like you said, like the eco warrior aspect, because there's the underlying suggestion that it's mankind's pollution of the seas that has forced evolution of this mako shark to hyper evolve to huge proportions and to be able to give birth to baby sharks. And I'm so tempted to go into the baby shark.
Don't please don't.
Give birth to baby sharks without the need of a mate. Why it gets to Paris, I don't know. There's a map that pops up showing how we tracked it from the middle of the Pacific all the way round every coastal line until it got to Paris. But that's not important because, like you say, how would a shark pose a threat in Paris? You can't keep people out of the water, and there's the upcoming triathlon, which will have a load of swimmers in there. That the mayor of the town, as needs to happen in any shark-based film since Jaws, the mayor refuses to stop people going in the water because this is where we make our money, and that's the setup, and it's nonsense, but it's a guilty pleasure. Even though it's a little insane at times. But something about it really entertained me. It's not Jawsome, but I did have fun. I had fun. I wrote these puns out purely because of the fun I was having with it. Even though it does kind of play a bit serious for most of it, it realises at the midpoint that it's a bit of a daft concept. And so after you've had like the first act where there's not really a lot happens aside from that opening section, in case people are getting bored of there not being a lot of gruesome deaths, it then goes complete carnage in the catacombs, doesn't it? And that's when it just really goes, oh, this is the kind of film you're going to be. And it just goes bonkers from that point onwards. And from that point onwards, it was just a thrill ride to the end.
It's not a great film, let's be honest. But what it is if you just want something that is going to entertain you, that you don't have to put any time, effort, or thinking into it, it's kind of okay. It works. It knows it's ridiculous, and I think you could see the shark as a metaphor, some sort of eco warning, but it's full of the typical shark cliches. And if you like a good killer shark movie, this isn't a bad killer shark movie.
I said to you before we started recording today that whereas last week was Something in the Water, I kind of got to the end of it and it was completely unmemorable. And I couldn't say whether it was good or bad because it had no impact. With this one, I had enough fun and I can remember so much about it because it lent into what it was and it didn't take itself at all seriously. It's just on the right side of ridiculous fun.
Yeah, and still allows itself to be entertaining.
Yes.